Hello and welcome to the TMZ podcast. I'm Charlie Cotton, and joining me on the podcast today is our legal Lothario. Or is it Lothario lawyer?
I'm starting to enjoy either version of it. I've leaned in. Every time I see you, I'm like, he's going to say it again. He's
Yeah.
gonna call me a Lothario. Gives me a lot of credit, dude.
It's Derek Kaufman.
Yes.
He's in the studio today because we got some legal issues to discuss.
Big legal day.
We're going to talk about Diddy because his alleged victims are not happy with his carefree attitude. We're going to talk about Elton John, who apparently he peed in a shoe. Oh, not in a shoe, in a shoe store.
In a shoe store.
A shoe would have been
in a bottle.
In a bottle.
But apparently not in a restroom. So we'll
Right.
talk about that.
A shoe actually would be a good receptacle for the pee.
Yeah, a shoe might hold it more, a little absorbent.
Yeah. We'll talk about Bobbi Althoff, the YouTuber, influencer. She was carried out like a baby, that drunk out of a Nashville bar.
Yeah.
And she's already talking about it.
Although she usually has such a flat affect, I'm not sure I would have noticed. If she's drunk, she's sort of like that. So I'd
Yeah.
have been like, oh, she
I'm
just faded.
tipsy.
I'm tipsy, huh?
But to
deadpan.
begin with, the Alec Baldwin trial begins today. And you're the perfect person to talk to because you've got a podcast coming out about the trial of Alec Baldwin.
We do. Jason and I are getting together, dusting off the old behind the bar set, and we're going to bring updates, legal analysis for what is the biggest trial of the last few years, for sure, in terms of a celebrity. I don't think anyone expected it to get to a full-blown trial. Remember, he was indicted at first, then the prosecutor had to drop the charges, then refiled them. So he's facing this count of involuntary manslaughter. It kicks off today. We're going to have jury selection. So we'll walk you through the whole process of what a trial is, because it's really like a movie in a lot of ways. It's a long presentation with a lot of preparation beforehand that looks spontaneous, but is actually kind of scripted almost and sort of plays out in front of the jury.
Yeah, I'm so interested to see this trial. Is it going to be broadcast live?
It will. It will be broadcast. It'll be live streamed. Court TV is covering it. So we'll have immediate updates of what are the twists and turns, who are the witnesses on the stand, what are the big moments. Obviously, the presentations by the lawyers often become celebrities in the case. Remember the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case? The lawyers themselves become sort of celebrities during the trial because they're presenting evidence, they're having their Perry Mason moments, and so it'll be interesting. I'm excited for it.
And it's taking place in Santa Fe. Is there people outside the courthouse holding free Alec signs right now? Or
There will be factions. I mean, the court TV before court starts is just like a camera on the parking lot, and there's people gathering. There's lots and lots of news coverage. I'm sure you'll see some supporters, but my sense is you will see more negative coverage. I think the city of Santa Fe and the state of New Mexico are not happy this happened on their turf. You try to attract productions to your area. You give tax incentives. This is a way to bring in Hollywood into your town, but you want them to behave properly and according to your standards. And when someone dies on set, there's this feeling that, oh, these outsiders came in, they were all rough and reckless, and someone ended up dying, and you have to pay the price for this. This ain't Hollywood.
Right.
So we'll see how it turns out.
Well, pre-trial, Alec has had a big win because he had a couple of roles on set.
Mm-hmm.
One was his role as an actor, and one was his role as a producer, one of a few producers on the set. And the judge just ruled that his duties as a producer would not come under scrutiny. It would just be him as an actor that would be examined.
That's exactly right. So the pretrial motions are to set the parameters of what types of evidence you can put in front of the jury. So one type of evidence that the judge is not going to allow is any evidence about Alec's role as executive producer. And what the judge said was, I think this will be confusing to the jury. He wore both these hats. As an executive producer, maybe you set some of the standards on the set, you organize the safety protocols and things of that nature. But as an actor, you're there to act, and you are following the rules on the set. And so the judge said, this is going to be confusing for them to hear both of these things. What are you trying to prove? That he was reckless or that he set improper standards? And the judge said, this case is going to be about when he was acting in that scene, or at least rehearsing for that scene in the church. Did he behave recklessly? Did he behave in such a grossly negligent manner that we should hold him criminally responsible? We're not going to look at whether or not, as an EP of the film, remember, this was a small film. It was $6 to $7 million. He's a big name. he's an EP, but he's not kind of doing the grunt work of,
Right.
of an executive producer. He's sort of a big name that you can say executive produced, but maybe didn't get down into the details of the production of the movie. So the judge said, I'm not going to allow any of that in. Keep this simple. Explain to the jury why you think when he pulled the gun, he shouldn't have pulled the trigger and pointed at Helena Hutchins. That's all the jury needs to know. And so it does simplify the case. I'm not sure it's fatal to the prosecution. This is being touted as a big victory to keep all the EP stuff out. It also just simplifies the case. The prosecution now just needs to prove that there were safety standards, there were safety meetings on set. Alec Baldwin disregarded them. There's evidence that maybe he was on his phone with Hilaria during the meetings, sort of blowing them off, like how people blow off safety meetings sometimes in a workplace.
Right.
Now it's coming back to haunt him because
Yeah.
they're going to say, you blew all that stuff off, you had a loaded weapon in your hand, and you pointed it at someone, and they ended up dead, and you're responsible.
So the person who has been found responsible so far is Hannah Gutierrez Reed,
That's right.
the armorer. She's actually appealing her conviction, but Alec faces a 4th-degree felony, involuntary manslaughter, so he could
get 18 months in prison.
18 months.
And that's what Hannah Gutierrez Reed is currently serving. And so, they've already got one person that they found responsible. Now, people think, well, why should 2 people be responsible? That's very common. They're saying a lot of people were at fault and a lot of people should pay the price. So it doesn't mean that Alec can just say, hey, hey, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, you got the culprit. It's not me. It's obviously her, and you've already punished her. That's not going to work. He's
Right.
facing his own independent liability for pulling that gun in the rehearsal, not checking it himself, maybe. So this will be a very, very interesting trial. I think it's bad news for him. I really do. I think he's dug in his heels a lot. He has insisted that he never pulled the trigger. Remember, he went on that interview with George Stephanopoulos right afterwards and said, no, I pulled the gun, but then it just fired.
That is going to be...
Why do that?
That is going to be... no pun intended, the smoking gun.
It really is.
That is, did he pull the trigger or not? If the prosecutors can prove that within a reasonable doubt he did pull the trigger, then he might be toast.
I think so. And he didn't, I don't want to belabor this too much because listen to our other podcast, which is more in depth. We have other stories to cover here. But why did he make it about that? Because when he painted himself into a corner and said, I didn't pull the trigger, he made it seem as though pulling the trigger is a bad act, right? He's saying, I didn't do that. But he didn't have to do that. He could have said, someone handed me a cold gun. They said this wasn't a loaded weapon. And of course, I fired it because I'm an actor who was told that it's a gun that doesn't have real bullets in it. So in the scene, I'm going to have to fire it. He's now painted himself into a corner saying it misfired in my hand and I didn't pull it, making it seem as though if they can prove he pulled the trigger, it's bad news.
Right.
He didn't have to do that, right? He could have just said, I'm an actor. I pulled the trigger. Of course I did. Have you ever watched a movie? Of course they pull the triggers.
Oh, man, this is going to be so
It's a very
to
interesting
watch.
trial.
It's going to last a few weeks?
It's going to last at least 2 weeks, probably. It's July 9th to July 19th is what the trial period is, but we'll have to see it. Then goes to the jury and they deliberate, so we'll see.
Okay, very good. On to our next story. Cassie and other alleged victims of Diddy's are outraged about his carefree attitude heading into what might be another criminal trial. So we've seen him
Hopping on the PJ, dude.
hopping on PJs, hopping on whitewater rafts, doing various things out and about with people, like basically signaling to us, society, that I'm not worried about these charges. I'm going to get off. I'm completely innocent. That's what he's trying to portray. But the victims obviously see this media and read it very differently.
Yes. And I want to ask you, this is where your expertise comes in really handy because you have a particular perspective. When we saw pictures of Diddy in some remote location, was it in Idaho? Where was he whitewater rafting?
Oh,
Wyoming, maybe.
okay. Yeah.
Okay, so he's in Wyoming. We got pictures of him whitewater rafting. Everyone is thinking like, oh, those are cool pictures. He does look carefree. Do you read those as intentional? Because paparazzi don't camp outside of whitewater rafting. So when those pictures come out, it does look like a play by Diddy to project a carefree attitude in light of all the bad news with the investigation. Is that right?
Without a doubt, he, or his team told the paparazzi where we'd be and when, and probably, as a lot of celebrities do, reviewed the photos afterwards and said, you can try to sell that one, or let's delete that
All
one.
right, look a little fat here. I don't want that one.
100%.
I'm not smiling in this one.
That's
whatever.
what so many celebrities do. All the biggest celebrities have their own paparazzi. And so the paparazzi photos we see of them in magazines are kind of just set up glamour shots that they've approved because they don't want to look a bit weird or have a wonky face. So yeah, he set that up, but he's been posting a lot of his own, like didn't he post a lot of the private jet stuff too?
Yeah, so he's posting this stuff, which is why I think it's fair for Cassie's lawyers, this guy named Douglas Wigdor, who said, I don't think whitewater rafting will prepare him for the choppy waters that lie ahead. Sometimes I really roll my
That
eyes
is
when
an eye
lawyers
roll.
try to write
That's an eye
like
roll.
poetry. Adria English, who recently sued him, she's a former, porn star. She weighed in, and her lawyer said, after seeing defendant Combs whitewater rafting and jetting around his personal plane, seemingly enjoying life despite all the atrocities he's caused and has been accused of by countless individuals over decades, Mrs. English is even more motivated to ensure justice prevails. I think these are fair comments. If there were just photos of Diddy walking around that you got, maybe he was outside of a restaurant that you happen to be at, Craig's or something, I might say, he's not trying to look anyway. He's just living life.
Well, if he's going to Craig's, then
That's true. But
if he's out, if he's on Rodeo shopping, like celebrities know where paparazzi are.
Mhm.
They just know. And so if they're in a very paparazzi-filled area, you know that they've got some motivation behind being filmed or photographed right now.
They're very aware.
So I would also judge that, but I don't know what Diddy's supposed to do. Is he supposed to be a recluse? And that he thinks that would make him look guilty.
Yes, and he also, remember, in his mindset, he doesn't believe he's a criminal. He has come out and said, I'm sorry about that video of Cassie. I deeply apologize. It was a low point in my life, but this federal investigation, I'm innocent of all these charges. So he doesn't want to hunker down and cry in his mansion. So he is trying to show that there's an investigation, but I didn't do anything wrong. So I'm going to go live my life a whitewater raft. I can see both sides, but they are open. Cassie's lawyer and Adria English, I think it's fair game for them to say this is really bad look for you optically.
Okay, on to our next story. Elton John, he was in France with his 2 sons and a bodyguard, and he went into a shoe store and asked the person working there if he can use the restroom. The guy said, no, I'm sorry, we don't have a restroom. So then he turned around, asked his bodyguard for a bottle, and started peeing in this plastic receptacle and missed a little bit.
Yeah, apparently did the best he could, but it's very hard to aim in a bottle. I don't know if we had a large mouth on the top or whatever, but it can be tough, right?
Don't say mouth when you're peeing in something, man. That's a tell on you.
That's a problem. So we talked to the guy though, right? What's his name?
His name is
the shoe store owner.
Oh, Ryan Sukar. He's the owner of Sugar Kicks, and yeah, he said he was shocked and frustrated. He didn't know what was going on. He said this is the funniest part. He had no idea who Elton John was when this was all going down. And when he asked Elton what he did for a living, the singer simply responded, I'm Elton John. What do you do for a living? I'm Elton John.
I'm a legend, okay? And I'm going to be in your store. I'm going to be peeing in a Fanta bottle. So that's what's going to happen. It's a very odd story. He was in there with his kids. I mean, Jason Beckerman was saying this is kind of like the ultimate show of entitlement to ask for a bottle from a bodyguard, pee in it. He's been so disconnected from what it is to be a real, normal human that maybe this didn't even dawn on him that it's a little weird maybe to pee in the bottle, or he was trying to prove a point that you should have a bathroom. And
you should go somewhere
because you don't have a bathroom.
Why didn't he say, could I go out in the stockroom and pee in the bottle? Or go somewhere private and pee in the bottle?
I'll give a little personal story. When I was a little kid, I went to see Karate Kid Part 3, and it was very highly anticipated. It shows you my age a little bit. But I went, and I had a massive big gulp. And I was in the theater, and I didn't want to leave because it was very critical to the movie that I see all of it. And so I got to a point where I couldn't get up. And then my mom just said, this is going to be a moment for you. You're going to do it in this big gulp that you've drank. You're now going to empty into it. And I did in the theater. Yeah. But I was also 9 years old.
Don't tell me you drank it.
I didn't drink it, but we had to carefully bring it out because the volume of liquid that went in was what was basically coming out. And we carefully brought it to a trash receptacle. There's a lot of maybe detail for this, but this can happen.
That's not a shocking story to me. That happened to me last week. That is not. I'm a paparazzi by trade.
That's right.
Finding public bathrooms is hard. I pee in bottles weekly.
Yes, but do you try to be discreet about it? Do you do it in the middle of shoe stores?
No, I do it in my car. Okay, onto our almost news story.
I don't want to drive with you anywhere. I don't want to be in your front seat.
Yeah, that's not apple juice, Derek. Okay, Bobbi Althoff. She's the YouTuber. She does all the interviews, monotone with celebrities.
Yes.
She's linked with Drake pretty heavily.
Oh, that's what I'm curious about. Is she still what does she think of the whole Kendrick Drake thing? I'm just curious.
I'll ask her if I see her.
Ask her, please.
So she was in Nashville hanging out with her friends, and I mean, hanging out is a bit of a pun because they had to carry her out like I've got a 3-year-old. They carried her out like a 3-year-old likes to be carried, kind of around your waist a bit.
Yeah, she's petite. It was a football player carrying her out. So,
Yeah,
so it
Sean-
is like you carrying Peach out. Like
True. I mean, she's not a large lady, but I mean, it'd be quite hard for I mean, he's a football player. Sean Murphy Bunting, he carried her out, but
he's a cornerback though. It's not like he's a big lineman. He's like
Right.
strong enough. But
it looked difficult to do, but man, for someone to get that drunk, like a public figure to get so drunk they can't even move, is like, it's pretty funny to me.
You know what I've noticed about this? So this was in Nashville, right? There seems to be this creeping trend of like the real rowdiest antics go down in Nashville these days. This is where Morgan Wallen chucked the chair off of the balcony. This is where sadly that kid was wandering around and drowned in a river.
Yes, right.
This is where, this is now where she was so drunk she had to be carried out. I think LA is considered, it's too hot there. There's too many cameras, but maybe in Nashville, we might be able to get away with this and no one will notice, although we all notice and it all ends up on social media anyway. So there seems to be this attitude that the real partying goes on in Nashville.
I
Do
agree.
you have this?
I agree. I mean, it makes Nashville look like a lot of fun because that is where celebrities go to get drunk.
And country is now like on the rise. It used to be like Lindsay Lohan, Paris Hilton, Kim Kardashian. They would hang out in LA, and that seemed like the hottest spot if you were into celebrity culture. Now it's all over the place, and Nashville's like a big hot spot too.
You ever been that drunk?
I have only on my bachelor party in New Orleans. Got wrecked.
I can't imagine what you guys got up to at your bachelor party.
Hey man, I woke up with a lot of beads on. Let me just tell you. I don't know if that means I flashed a lot of people, but I don't know.
You were flashing people. What a wild bachelor.
My bachelor party. I don't remember much of it.
Oh my god. Okay, Derek, thanks for joining me, mate.
Always fun.
And we'll see you guys here tomorrow. Goodbye.